Here's my hot take. Are you ready for it?
Uh-oh.
I don't care. Welcome into the NFL on Fox podcast. I'm Dave Helman, and the frenzy of the new league year continues. It's only been like 4 days since we've been in your ear, but so much to get to. An NFL legend retired. There have been trades. There have been big free agent signings. We're going to get to all of it. Oh, yeah, we cover the draft as well. We've also got Tennessee quarterback and NFL draft hopeful Joe Milton, one of the most exciting performers at the NFL Combine, on the show today. So we got you covered on all angles. A little free agency, a little draft. You're going to want to make sure you listen to this one. You're going to want to make sure you're subscribed. We're coming at you all through the off season. Make sure you go find us on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, wherever you get your NFL news. We are on Twitter. We're on Instagram at NFL on Fox Pod. We're on TikTok. Yes, I know I might look a little old to be on TikTok, but I'm on there. I promise you, at NFL on Fox Pod. We got you covered throughout the offseason. And like I said, it's been a busy few days since the last time we talked to you. Aaron Donald retired. Free agent frenzy all over the place. We've got the Chicago Bears making moves, and that's where we're going to start. We were already going to talk to our Fox Sports NFC North reporter, Carmen Vitali, anyway, just about everything going on in that division and around the NFL. But then the Chicago Bears took center stage over the weekend, and we knew it would be a great conversation. So let's catch up with Carmen Vitali about the Chicago Bears, everything happening there, and news and notes from around free agency as well. All right, Carmen, given what's happened since the last time we recorded an episode, there's just not a better person to talk to than an NFC North reporter who is from Chicago, because it was a busy weekend, obviously, for the Chicago Bears. It started off fun enough. Keenan Allen getting dealt from the Chargers to the Bears for a 4th-round pick. And if there were any lingering questions about who would be throwing him the ball, the Bears also shipped Justin Fields out of town over the weekend to the Steelers for a conditional 6th-round pick in 2025. So not even in the upcoming draft, but next year's draft. Let's start it out on a base level as somebody who has been in the thick of this Justin Fields, we'll call it drama. Will he stay? Will he go? Should he stay? What's going to happen? How does it feel to have some clarity on everything going on with the Chicago Bears?
It's been a rough couple of days, weirdly enough, trying to process that the fighting for my life on Twitter is over. This is something that I expected the Chicago Bears to do all the way back. I mean, mid-season is probably too conservative still. I kind of figured the Bears were going to move on from Justin Fields because it made too much fiscal sense. And especially when they got the 1st overall pick, it's such a unique scenario that the Chicago Bears are in, having the 1st overall pick without a roster that warrants it. In fact, the Chicago Bears roster, especially after everything that's happened over free agency this offseason so far, is a really good landing spot for a young quarterback. So I am glad they made the right decision. This is not at all an indictment on if I think that Justin Fields is a good player. He's a phenomenal talent. He's an incredible athlete. He now gets a chance to go somewhere where he could potentially contend for the starting job. If not this year, then definitely next. And he'll be in a system and have a culture that's a fit for him, which is not the list on that. That was not a big list when it came to what landing spots were going to be good, mutually good for Justin Fields and for the Chicago Bears and the return they got. So I think that's what you're seeing here. Wrote a huge article as soon as the trade happened about how Ryan Poles, the general manager of the Chicago Bears, did right by a guy that he did not wrong in the first place. Ryan Poles was not the one that drafted Justin Fields into that scenario in Chicago, but he did right by the guy, even though he didn't draft him.
Yeah, I like that you started there. Let's start with the Fields aspect of it, and then we can dive into everything Bears. I see, it's Monday as we're recording this. I see stuff on social media. I see various reports about, oh, well, there were better offers. Did the Bears mess this up by waiting too long? Did the Bears mess this up by not waiting long enough? Because maybe when the draft comes and goes, if somebody doesn't have their quarterback plan come to fruition in the draft, maybe they'll be more willing to trade for Justin Fields. Here's my hot take. Are you ready for it?
Uh-oh.
I don't care. I don't care about all of this quibbling about did the Bears get good value? Did they, oh my God, they could have gotten a third or a fourth or whatever. Like you just said, they said at the at the NFL Combine in Indianapolis, Ryan Poles said, we want to do right by Justin Fields. We don't want this thing dragging out. You would know better than I. I've never been to Hallis Hall in Chicago, but he seems to be well liked. Justin Fields does. It seems like the guys there like him. They wish him well. They see him as a good teammate. Why do you want to mess up the vibes and the excitement and everything that's about to be coming the Bears' way by turning this into any more of a saga than it needs to be? Like you said, they didn't draft Justin Fields. They've already done a good job of maneuvering around for extra draft capital, and they could continue to do that. We'll get to that later. But just get this out of the way. I don't really care what the compensation was. I'm glad that they ripped the Band-Aid off, and I'm glad that Justin Fields is somewhere advantageous for him.
Hallis Hall and the Chicago Bears organization is a place where culture is very important. It's very important to Ryan Poles. It's very important to Matt Eberflus. You ask any player that has played for Matt Eberflus, and they love him because they love that the culture that he has built, and that has been in lockstep with Ryan Poles. You said it. Why mess that up? There was absolutely no thought given to drafting a new quarterback while Justin Fields was still on the roster. That would have been disastrous when it comes to the locker room and how divisive that would have made it. You saw all of the players on social media bidding their farewells to Justin Fields. This isn't an easy thing for them. He's a phenomenal teammate. He's very well liked, not only in the locker room, but around the building. This was something where you needed to get him out before you even went to Caleb Williams' pro day, just because of the discourse, because of the mixed messages it sends. And again, because Ryan Poles wanted this clean slate. This is his first opportunity to bring in his guy under center into an environment that he himself has curated. I see a lot of talk on Twitter about people like, well, Justin Fields would have had this roster, he might have done better. Yeah, you're right. He probably would have. Chicago did him absolutely no favors in the first couple of years of his career there, but Ryan Poles wasn't in charge then. This rebuild is Ryan Poles setting a really soft landing for the eventual new quarterback he was going to bring in. I fully believe this was always his intention. It was just going to be a matter of when and how they could move Justin Fields. And as far as I'm concerned, Ryan Poles did a very admirable thing by not being the ruthless business leader that we all often see GMs be, right or wrong. He looked at the human aspect of it, and of the trade offers that were on the table, he got Justin Fields and his agent's input as to where he would want to go. Pittsburgh was Justin Fields' preferred landing destination. Ryan Poles did not need to take that into account. He could have just taken the best offer outright, but instead, he gave up what little leverage he even had. And he gave up waiting and dragging this process out for the sake of team culture in order to put Justin Fields in a good position and the Bears themselves in a good position to bring in a new quarterback under center.
People like you and me, we get on these podcasts, we get on the radio, and you hear the word timeline a lot, or window, and teams operating within those timelines. This is a perfect example of it. To go back to your point, Justin Fields, looking back on it, I mean, it was obvious at the time, but it's even more obvious now. Justin Fields was a desperation pick made by the previous regime to keep their jobs. Exactly, by injecting a talented quarterback into a roster that was slipping. It failed miserably, and Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy were out of jobs the next year. And so then Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus come in with a mess to clean up, in addition to a quarterback whose contract doesn't work with their timeline for being competitive. That is what was so key about this, is now your team looks more and more ready, and you're going to drop in a quarterback who won't cost you a ton of money for the next 3 years. It is the ideal team building scenario. There's a dozen different ways to build a contender, but this is like 101. This is the easy way to do it. And I'm curious now, with what we've seen earlier in the spring, DeAndre Swift, Gerald Everett. Obviously, they re-signed Jalen Johnson on the defensive side, and now you get Kevin Byard as well. Now you get Keenan Allen as well.
Yeah.
I mean, how great does this look for Caleb Williams to step in? And I would say I don't want to put expectations on the guy, but let's be honest, those are going to be there anyway. But they should be, with the job that they've done putting talent on this team.
This was a 7-win team last year. The Chicago Bears were. And yes, you are bringing in a rookie quarterback, whether that's Caleb Williams, whether that's whoever the Bears have decided fits their scheme the best. But now you have the expectation that you're going to at least kind of teeter on the same level you were last year, and then hopefully get a little bit better. Will that translate to wins? I don't like to see success as just in the win column. I want to see tangible improvement. That's what we saw out of the Bears last year towards the end of the season, especially after the Montez Sweat trade. That defense completely clicked into gear. They were a top 5 defense down the stretch last year. That was the tangible improvement you needed to see. And now again, you're going into this year. It might not work right away. You might not get to double-digit wins this first year, but as long as you see the vision, you see the plan, I think that you can feel good if you're Bears ownership about what you've built. And at the end of the day, this is just the 3rd season removed from a total rebuild, a total teardown. This was, I realize that this league is not known for being patient, but Ryan Poles is safe this year. I would tend to think Matt Eberflus is too, because they did keep him on this offseason because of the tangible improvement they saw on the defensive side of the ball. Now we're going to have a really good 1-2 punch, a really good veteran 1-2 punch between DJ Moore and Keenan Allen to help Caleb Williams, or whoever it ends up being, a rookie, acclimate to this league. And it matters when you have experience around you. And you've seen the Bears, they have like 2 different veteran centers right now to try and see who might end up being the guy for the young starter up front. You have depth along the offensive line. And yeah, you have DeAndre Swift now in the backfield. That's part of a stable of running backs, but he is also considered a veteran at this point. So you've infused the offense with a ton of experience in order to get ready for the young guys so they can move him along as quickly as possible and see that tangible improvement and development by the end of this year.
Are you ready for my stat of the day? I really love this.
Okay.
27 teams have drafted a quarterback number 1 overall during the Super Bowl era.
Yeah.
Only 3 of them had as many or more wins than the 2023 Chicago Bears. That would be the 1990 Colts, the 2016 Rams, and last year's Carolina Panthers. But what is the key difference there? All 3 of those teams traded the farm to get up into the number 1 spot, whereas the Bears are a better team, not a weakened team. Yes. I mean, the Panthers sets a bad precedent, but that team, they traded away Christian McCaffrey. They also traded away DJ Moore the next spring. They were a significantly worse team by the time Bryce Young got to their roster. The Bears will be better. It really is an unprecedented situation in the Super Bowl era. And now I want to take that opportunity. We'll just wrap up all things Bears by spinning it forward. I want to talk a little draft with you, and I'll do a shameless teaser. This won't be the last time you and I talk draft, because we're going to do a mock draft next week. So we're not going to get too deep into it, but half of the excitement for the Chicago Bears is they still have a top 10 draft pick because of that trade Ryan Poles made with the Panthers last year. So now that we know pick number 1 will be a quarterback, What do we think is the most likely path there for the Bears down at number 9 with their second pick in the top 10?
Yeah, the Chicago Bears only have 4 picks in the draft, but as far as draft value, they have 2 picks in the top 10 because of that number 1 overall pick that came to them because of the Carolina Panthers and how sorry they have been, especially last year. And now the Bears have their own pick, their own number 9 overall pick. And given the lack of draft capital and picks that they do not have a second round pick anymore. I think that it makes a lot of sense, and what we've seen out of Ryan Poles is being able to manipulate draft picks into more draft picks. So I kind of expect a trade down. If I'm the Chicago Bears, I've got my quarterback at number 1 overall. You get down to number 9. Given the holes that they still have on the roster, you're talking the 3rd wide receiver, you're talking offensive line depth, you're talking you probably need another edge guy. I think they like Jackson Powers Johnson a lot, the center out of Oregon. They sent a huge contingent to Oregon's pro day to see him and a couple of others. I think all of that can be accomplished in the second round and later when you're talking about who to fill those holes with. So that makes sense to me, even if, you could trade down and not trade down to the second round. You could still just trade down to, I don't know, pick 15, 16, somewhere in the teens, and still pick up another second round pick that's going to help you fill all of these holes while still getting getting good value and trusting your evaluation process. Ryan Poles in Chicago has absolutely earned the right for people to trust him when it comes to the draft when you think about the players that he has drafted so far for this organization. So I personally see a trade down, but I mean, I don't know if Roma Dunze is sitting there, if even Brock Bowers, it's a little rich for a tight end, but he's like the tight end, and Shane Waldron really loves using tight ends to kind of set up different play action concepts. It's going to be interesting to see what they ultimately do, but this is chestnut checkers, Dave, and Ryan Poles is really good at playing it.
I mean, I'm looking at their draft history, and yeah, I trust Ryan Poles to pull something off between Braxton Jones, Kyler Gordon, Jaquan Brisker,
Quan Brisker,
Tyreek Stevenson, a very underrated corner.
yeah,
Obviously, Darnell Wright looking like that was the right pick for them last year in the first round. I hear what you're saying. Trading back seems like it makes a lot of sense for the Bears, but if it's true that 4 quarterbacks are going to go in the top 10, that means somebody really, really fun is going to be
yeah.
there for them, whether it's one of those top tier tackles, or I mean, if Roma Dunze or Malik Neighbors is there for the Bears to draft, I
It'd
wouldn't
be hard to say no to
I
that.
wouldn't blame them if they pulled the trigger, even knowing that they need more picks. It's so much fun to think about. I love it when a team has 2 or 3 really appealing options. We will keep an eye on that, and we will also, like I said, you and I are going to go through our mock draft very soon, so stay on the lookout for that. Carm, I think that does it for the Bears, but since we got you here, you want to just help me go through some other big time signings that have happened while we've been off the air?
Duh.
Okay, awesome. I appreciate that. I figured that would be the answer. Just wanted to check. Let's start with something that happened while we were prepping for the show. Chase Young to the New Orleans Saints. And that part is whatever. I'm Chase Young, the former, a number 2 overall pick in 2020, phenom out of Ohio State, shown some flashes of greatness. But my thing is that the report is he signed a 1-year, fully guaranteed $13 million deal to go down to New Orleans. And based on the recent track record, I don't know, man.
Yeah, it means the San Francisco 49ers parted with a 3rd round pick. I know it was a compensatory pick, but a 3rd round pick for 2.5 sacks, I believe is what Chase Young had with the San Francisco 49ers last year, which between both teams he was on last year, the Washington Commanders and the San Francisco 49ers, those defenses are set up for edge rushers, man. Like you should be easily hitting those double-digit marks if you are on the other side of a guy like Montez Sweat with John Allen on the interior in Washington or Nick Bosa on the other side of you in San Francisco. These are two guys that make your life incredibly easy by all the attention from offenses being placed on them. I don't know why Chase Young hasn't been more productive. It doesn't seem like he's been as productive since his knee injury. But I mean, that draft pedigree will follow you. And also, here's the other side of this, it's the New Orleans Saints that are doing this deal. Dave, I know you're from New Orleans, but you cannot look me in the eye and tell me that New Orleans makes good decisions when it comes to the salary cap or the contracts that they dole out. They are routinely in cap hell. And things like this are why.
You know what's funny? I can hear the angry Saints fans, so I'll just try to placate them. Like, I mean, they always find a way to make it work, right? Like they always get under
They
the
do.
cap. They always make the moves they need to do. It doesn't matter how many millions they are over the cap, but I mean, what has it gotten them? I hear Saints fans,
Right.
and I mean, that's where I'm from, so I hear it a lot. I hear Saints fans say like, "Oh, well, we get under the cap, we make it work every year. We always have the money we need to do what we need to do." And I'm like, "Yeah, but what has it gotten you really in the last
Right.
4 or 5 years? Like they are a fringe playoff team, a team that in the best world is capable of winning their division, but hasn't. And also, even if they do, are they good enough to make a whole lot more noise other than that? For me, the answer's no. I guess I admire the way that the Saints just keep pushing though. Like you have this veteran roster, you know, Demario Davis, Tyron Matthew, Cameron
Mhm.
Jordan, even throw Derek Carr in there. I think you've got a lot of guys on this team that are closer to the end of their career than the beginning. So until they call it quits, just keep pushing and hey, you never know, who dat nation, but I don't know. The Saints are an annual head scratcher for me.
Yeah, and it'll be very interesting to see if, again, Chase Young can see production for an aging veteran defensive line when he wasn't able to see a ton of production along some of the best defensive lines that we've seen in this league in years, if we're being quite honest.
All right, couple of other items. I mean, let's there's more signings to get to, but I guess we're burying the lead. I think at this point everybody knows Aaron Donald retired from the NFL over the weekend.
Speaking
Personally,
of insane defensive line.
yeah, good point. As a Rams truther, as somebody who's buying all the stock I can in the Rams, this one hurt a little bit just because I feel like the Rams are so close to making noise again, but at the same time, 8-time first team All Pro, 10-time Pro Bowler, not only won a Super Bowl with the Rams, but was a huge reason why they wound up,
Why?
yeah, why they won that game. So Aaron Donald can obviously do whatever the hell he wants to do. He retires as one of the, I don't know. I mean, he retires as one of the two best defensive tackles of all time, if not the best, and one of the 5 to 10 best defenders in NFL history. I mean, what a
I
career.
would say he's one of 5 to 10 best players to ever play the game. I mean,
I'm not going to argue
this
with
is
that.
coming from this is coming from a girl who grew up with a lot of defense because there was no offense to speak of in Chicago. But I've become a defensive girly. I've got a soft spot for defense. And when I think about the players that my favorite players league wide growing up, and especially the last decade, I think of Aaron Donald. I think of a defensive tackle. I don't think of a quarterback. I don't think of a receiver. I think of Aaron Donald because of the way that he was able to impose his will week in and week out. You were playing the Los Angeles Rams or the St. Louis Rams earlier in his career. Your number one public enemy, number one, was always Aaron Donald. It wasn't who they had under center. It wasn't anything like that. When you were an opposing team trying to game plan for the Rams, your number one priority was figuring out how to deal with Aaron Donald. And even then, you still had to kind of just hold on, like Jesus, take the wheel and pray, because this man is unlike anything we've ever seen at the position before. He came out of Pitt undersized. And you think about that's an insane thing to say about Aaron Donald, but he's only 6'1". He's just built like a bowling ball and the did things that you shouldn't be able to do from that interior position along a defensive line. I am absolutely heartbroken that I won't get to see him play, but I'm also grateful that I was able to be at games where he was on the field and watch him firsthand, because it's not something I ever took for granted. And the league landscape looks completely different without him in it.
Yeah, when you do and we're fortunate enough to have watched a lot of football in person. When you do your list of like, who are the guys I was blessed enough to have seen play, he's definitely on the short list. My favorite thing with Aaron Donald is he's just one of those guys who every step of the way, he just surpassed the goal, surpassed the expectations. Like Elle Woods in Legally Blonde. Like what? It's hard. Like it's hard to do this.
More
Like
like it's hard.
he was
Good pull.
he was thank you. He was a unanimous All-American at Pitt. He won like every trophy you can win as a defensive lineman at Pitt, like the Bednarik Award, the Lott Award, like just trophies on trophies on trophies. He gets to the NFL. He dominates the Senior Bowl, which was the first time I ever remember seeing him just mowing down
Same.
everybody in his path. Then he gets drafted. He's Rookie of the Year immediately. He's a Pro Bowler immediately. And then he just goes on this run of first team All-Pro every year. Like I said, didn't just
Pro
win
Bowl every year. Yep.
didn't just win a championship, but like he called game. He called game in a Super Bowl.
He called
Carm.
game in a Super Bowl. I know.
So
And you saw like the behind the scenes of Sean McVay being like, Aaron's going to make this play. Aaron can make this play. Aaron can make this play. Oh my God, Aaron made the play. Like that was an incredible moment and so fitting. And I think that was the reason that everybody was happy to see the Rams win that Super Bowl, was because it meant that Aaron Donald had a Super Bowl finally. The fruits of his labor finally paid off, because that was the one thing that was missing from his laundry list of accolades, was a Super Bowl championship. And he got it. And so what else does he have to prove?
As an unabashed LSU grad and homer,
I know you weren't excited.
I was not.
that
I
meant-
was not happy. But I have the utmost respect and appreciation for Aaron Donald. If somebody was going to break Joe Burrow's heart, I'm really glad it was him. Best of wishes to Aaron Donald. Yeah, of course that happens on a Saturday, a few days before or a Friday before. Yeah, right after we record for the week. That's when that happens. But best wishes to Aaron Donald. Back to free agency. Another big one that happened right around the time the Chicago Bears traded for Keenan Allen was the Kansas City Chiefs get their deep threat. They get Marquise Hollywood Brown to sign up on a 1-year deal. And this is, in my opinion, this is just what happens when you are a dynasty. You saw it happen with the Patriots all the time, where guys are willing to take affordable deals to go play with the best of the best and know that they're going to have a reasonable chance to win a Super Bowl. And I feel like that's what happened here with Hollywood Brown.
Yeah, I mean, what is there even to say about this point, though? Like, from a Chiefs perspective, too, we saw them take Joe Schmo off the street. I mean, you and I could basically have been playing receiver for the Chiefs, and they still won a Super Bowl.
I don't know about that.
I'm serious.
I get your point.
I know.
I
really I really enjoyed Rashee Rice and the way that he came on. But at the same time, you can't pretend like these guys had a number one wide receiver.
Nope.
Other than a tight end in Travis Kelce, who didn't really come on until the postseason, and they still won the Super Bowl. So this is great. This is wonderful for the Chiefs. They're going to have a guy that's going to be part of their rotation, but like, there's nothing they can't do. And yeah, you're right. From Hollywood Brown's perspective, he's like, well, shoot, I'm going to go to Kansas City and go win me a Super Bowl, because that's what happens no matter who's on that roster. And it's an insane thing to witness. You talk about things that you're excited or you're grateful that you get to see in person. I'm grateful I get to see this Kansas City Chiefs dynasty in person, because this is something that we're going to be telling our kids, grandkids, whoever it is, about later on in life, because it's truly unprecedented what they've been able to do with now so little. And you know that Andy Reid and Pat Mahomes are going to get the best out of Hollywood Brown.
Here's another of my favorite stats. One quick thing before we move on. Another of my favorite stats of the day. Marquise Brown, remember, Kyler Murray missed half the season with injury. Cardinals were obviously a bad team last year. Marquise Brown had the worst year of his career, or one of them anyway. 574 yards, 4 touchdowns, 51 catches, career lows across the board. He still would have been top 3 in most every offensive category on the 2023 Chiefs. Like, the only guys on the Chiefs roster that caught more balls than Hollywood did last year were Travis Kelce and Rashee Rice. He would have been 4th in yardage. He would have been tied for 3rd in touchdowns. So even if that's all they get, it's a massive upgrade over what they had. And I have a feeling that playing with Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and Rashee Rice, I have a feeling it's going to be a lot better. So yeah, this is definitely a buy low, sell very, very high situation for Hollywood Brown. One last small one to get to before, because I have one last thing in mind for you. One last small bit of news. Jimmy Garoppolo, suspended for 2 games, does not stop him from signing a backup deal in LA. He will be Matthew Stafford's backup. It was Carson Wentz for a lot of last year. It makes sense to me. You know, he can win you a game or two if he needs to, and you know he loves living in awesome cities. Well, you know, Vegas, the Bay, like what's not to love about Jimmy G hanging out like on Manhattan Beach? Like, why not?
Dave, I routinely say this, the best job in the NFL isn't backup quarterback because you can come in maybe, but you're not really expected to do that, and you can just kinda be along for the ride, and that's at this point in Jimmy G's career, that seems like what he's doing, and you're right. He goes from San Francisco to Las Vegas to Los Angeles, and with a face like that, he can absolutely get all the endorsement deals that he needs to get, regardless of if he's an actual starter on an NFL team, which provided nothing happens to Matthew Stafford, he won't. But when it comes down to the football side of things too, I mean, they're very similar quarterbacks between him and Matt Stafford, or have a similar skill set, I should say. Matt Stafford is obviously the starter for a reason. But yeah, I mean, hey, more power to Jimmy G. Like, go to LA. Don't go to Cleveland. Don't go to like middle of nowhere America. Go to the places that are glitz and glam and whatever, because at the very least you could fall back on some sort of modeling contract. I don't know.
Exactly. I couldn't have said it better myself. And the media opportunities will be here in LA when his football career is done as well. All
Absolutely.
right, let's wrap this up. I wanted to save a few things for last because they're near and dear to my heart.
Mhm.
You're going to help me walk through some Cowboys news, if that's okay.
Oh, no.
It's,
Okay.
yeah, no, we got to do it. We got to do it. For starters, speaking of news that happened over the weekend, I really think this is the biggest development. You're going to hear a lot of people whine and complain about what's gone on with the Cowboys this offseason. Losing Tyron Smith to the New York Jets is really, it's the first one that really matters to me, though. You know, like you knew
Yeah.
you knew Dorrance Armstrong wasn't going to be affordable to keep. You knew some guys were going to follow Dan Quinn to Washington. You knew Tony Pollard was going to sign too big of a deal to keep, but Tyron Smith signs a 1-year deal with just $6.5 million in guarantees and roughly 13 million in incentives. It's up to 20 million, but he's going to have to play a lot of good football to make that much money. This is the first move of the Cowboys offseason that I genuinely think makes them a worse team in 2024.
Don't get me started on underappreciating offensive lineman Dave, because I love Tyron Smith. He was I get that he's had injury issues and all of that kind of stuff, but you realize that he's coming off a contract with the Dallas Cowboys that was an 8-year team friendly deal. And you can't find it in your heart to figure out how to make it work with him, especially like you said, it's only 6.5 million guaranteed. That's nuts to pay for a left tackle. Are you kidding me? Who are you going to get for cheaper than that? And this goes back to setting Dak Prescott up for success. You've got a decision to make when it comes to Dak Prescott, or rather, he's got a decision to make whether or not he wants to stay with a franchise that, for all intents and purposes, has not set him up for success. He gets you as far as he can in the regular season. That falls apart in the playoffs. I'm not absolving Dak Prescott of all of the responsibility there, but you think that if maybe you fortified the line so that the Dallas Cowboys offensive line actually lived up to what its reputation used to be, and getting Dak Prescott some good receivers other than CeeDee Lamb, and oh yeah, making sure that he's got a good backfield to lean on. Do you not think that that would help you get over the hump if you're the Dallas Cowboys in the postseason?
Oh,
It baffles me.
we're
It
gonna
absolutely baffles me.
we're gonna talk about Dak Prescott. Don't worry. Music to my ears. By the way, I'm glad I'm not the only one. But here's the thing. And if you're a Cowboys optimist, and I know that those fans still exist, it
How?
it, it hope is a hell of a drug, man. Hope is a hell of a drug. I can hear people saying, yeah, they drafted Tyler Smith 2 years ago to fill this role. That's what he's supposed to do. Tyron misses time. Tyron's old. Tyron gets hurt. We have Tyler Smith. What's the issue? The issue is, A, Tyler Smith played at an all-pro level at left guard, and I'm confident he can do a good job at tackle, but taking an all-pro out of his position is still a choice. And on top of that,
doesn't work out very often. Although if you're Tristan Wirfs in Tampa, somehow that works out. But not everybody's Tristan Wirfs.
I have a feeling he would be fine at tackle, but what do you do at guard? And what do you do about the fact that you lost center Tyler Biadasz to free agency as well? Do you want two new guys playing next to each other on the interior just because you can move Tyler Smith out to the left side? I don't know. That sounds really scary to me. I think this deal seems palatable if you're the Cowboys. Remember, if Tyron misses a month, that means you pay him that much less money. And instead, he's off to protect the blind side for Aaron Rodgers. If Aaron Rodgers isn't still dabbling in politics by the time training camp rolls around. I like the deal a lot for the New York Jets, but like I said, this is the first one, if you're the Cowboys, where I'm like, I don't know how you fix this in one offseason. Like, cutting Michael Gallup, cool. I think that's fine. I think you can get over that. Losing Tony Pollard, I think you can get over that. The Cowboys just re-signed Rico Dowdle back on a small deal while we were recording this. I think that makes a ton of sense. You can draft the next Tony Pollard. But this, I'm not convinced that this is one you can bounce back so easily from. The other news.
They're lucky too that this is a rich tackle class. It's a rich offensive line class in general. You know, you go further down and you can get some really good value for some guards there. But again, just like you were saying, why make more holes for you to have to fill in the draft when getting a left tackle again was so easily achievable with a guy that has proved loyal to you by signing an insane 8-year deal, which is not a contract any player should want to sign. And you can't make it work with him. I don't understand it. I really, really don't.
Don't let it fly under the radar that Tyron Smith played every year of that deal, by the way. Like, don't underestimate how rare that is. Like, it's rare for an NFL player to get to the end of a 5-year deal, let alone an 8-year deal. Tyron Smith played every year of it. He'll be a Cowboys Ring of Honor member eventually. I think he's a Hall of Famer eventually, but he will be moving on to the next stage of his career with the New York Jets. And I don't see the vision for how this is better in 2024, which brings us to the next point. You mentioned Dak. On Sunday, the Cowboys reworked a little bit of Dak Prescott's contract. Not to get too much in the weeds, but they tacked on some void years. They got his permission to do it, and they freed up $4.5 million, which they could have freed up as much as 18. So this feels like a very interesting decision to me, where they say, yeah, we'll move some of your money around to give us some leeway, to give us some wiggle room, but we don't want to touch all of that money. And it just continues to make me wonder what the plan is here. Like, if you're going to re-sign Dak Prescott, when exactly do you think is a good idea to do that? And if you're not going to re-sign Dak Prescott, what are we doing in 2025?
You just handed him $40 million in 2025, whether or not he's on your roster. So, well, of course, Dak agreed to that, because he's like, this doesn't mean anything. This means that I get $40 million from you, even if I decide to go somewhere else and get a max contract somewhere else. Because make no mistake, if Dak Prescott is allowed to hit free agency next year for the 2025 season, he will be at the top of that free agent class, and there will be an all-out bidding war for him. Good quarterback play is too hard to come by in this league. Coaches have too many egos. There's absolutely coaches and GMs out there that think, if Dak Prescott's on my roster, we win a Super Bowl. Point blank, period. So this was a very 1 foot in, 1 foot out approach, which we've seen from the Cowboys in multiple contracts, multiple big deals, multiple of their best players. They're not willing to fully commit, but they're also not willing to sit back and do nothing, because that's not exactly an option either. You can't let him hit the cap for $60 million in 2024 either. But it's just, you need to make a decision. You need to say, all right, we're committing to Dak long-term and give him the value that he deserves and would get even on the open market. Give him a max deal for a quarterback. Or you say, he hasn't gotten us over the hump. We're not willing to do that. And then you make moves to try and shed his contract, not add more to void years in in the future that Dak will get whether or not he's on the roster. It it is just it's a kind of a coward's way out. Although that's probably going to really piss off some Dallas fans, but
Oh,
I don't know what your team building strategy is then if you're just going to go 1 foot in, 1 foot out. You can't do it. Either you start the rebuild or you commit to Dak long term. There is no in between, and they're trying to make an in between that doesn't exist.
I promise you, you're not going to piss off Cowboy fans. Cowboy fans have been saying the same thing. And yeah, I think that's perfectly put. I do know, I'm sure the Cowboys feel like their hands are tied by, Dak having a no tag clause as well as a no
Trade
trade clause.
clause.
But
Yep.
I don't know. I think you put it perfectly. I think you just need to make a decision of what are we doing? What is the long-term future here? And it really feels like the Cowboys are just waiting until the last possible minute to make a choice. And if you follow the Dallas Cowboys for any length of time, you shouldn't be surprised. Deadlines make deals in Dallas. I don't see it. I don't get it. I'm going to give the Cowboys at least until the draft before I officially judge what I think they are, but I don't see the vision here at all. One last bit of Cowboy news, just it came down today. I think this was widely expected, but Leighton Vander Esch, former All-Pro linebacker, did announce his medical retirement. It sucks if you follow the Cowboys at all. Really talented player. Injuries have been an issue since the beginning of his career. Plays just 6 years, second team All-Pro as a rookie. I said this on Twitter. There was a brief moment of time where it looked like with Leighton Vander Esch and Jalen Smith, the Cowboys were going to have one of the best linebacker duos in the league for a long time. And with injuries being a primary reason why, it just did not work out that way. This is why the Cowboys signed Eric Kendricks. It's one of the few big signings they have done. And yeah, it just sucks. Best wishes to Leighton Vander Esch for a career that I thought was going to go a lot longer. It's unfortunate that it didn't.
Yeah, and you hate to see it happen where injuries are what provoked this, or a guy doesn't get to go out on his own terms. It's a rare feat when a guy does get to walk away from the game at the top of his game like Aaron Donald just did, but it's too often, and more often I should say, it happens more like Leighton Vander Esch, where your body just can't keep up with it, and it's nothing that you did. It's through no faults of your own, but it means that as a player, you're not able to that decision is taken away from you. And that's a really heartbreaking thing, because these guys gave their entire lives up until this point to this sport, to playing this sport. And to have so much of your identity wrapped up in this sport and then ripped away by something that you couldn't control is just like worst case scenario. So I really feel for Leighton Vander Esch, and I wish him the best, and his family the best. At least now, he'll be around for and maybe not, get more and more injured. Perhaps this is a good thing in the long term.
Very well said, as well as everything else you said on this segment, Carmen. Thank you so much for taking me through the news of the league. Like I said, Carmen will be back very soon as we go through our updated mock draft. We appreciate your help this offseason, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Anytime.
Thanks again to Carmen. Let's throw it to our next guest. Former Tennessee Volunteer quarterback Joe Milton joined the show. You might remember him from the NFL Combine as the guy with the rocket for an arm, NFL draft hopeful, one of the quarterbacks in this year's class. Looking to hear his name called in the last weekend of April. It was a lot of fun talking to Joe. Check it out.
All right, Joe, thanks again for joining me, man. I got to start out with this. So you go to the NFL Combine and you put on a show. Obviously, I think you turned a lot of heads in the on-field workouts. I'm gonna be pretentious for a minute. Like, as a longtime college football fan, if there's one thing that you know about Joe Milton, is that you have a freaking cannon. So I'm amused by the publicity where I'm like, yeah, this is what Joe Milton does. But how did it feel to you to kind of get out there and maybe show a new audience or a bigger audience in the NFL world what you can do?
It felt great, just an opportunity. I'm blessed to go out there and compete with some of the best collegiate athletes in the world. And also, man, just another opportunity to showcase who I am. let the coaches see another side of my personality. I mean, we're there for a week, so they get to actually be there with you, talk with you, go through some things. So they get to see my other side as well.
I'm curious about that, and I think it's such an interesting part of this. Like, people at home see you throw the ball on the field, and you got this big arm, but yeah, like it is a week-long process in Indianapolis where you're getting the medical scans, you're spending a lot of time in getting these checkups and things, and then you got your meetings. Can you just kind of take us through what the week in Indianapolis is like, and just what that experience is like from beginning to end, and all of the time that you spend doing different things for these teams?
Yeah, so you get there. We got there on a Tuesday. Uh, by the time we got there, it's kind of like midday. So we had a little team, I'd say like team meeting, basically just meeting the general manager for Detroit Lions this year. Um, and then after that, man, you just pretty much meetings after meetings. And then you kind of just go to dinner, and then you wake up the next morning at 6 a.m. And then it's time to go do like your medical checkups, be in a hospital all day if you have anything wrong with you. Other than that, hospital, you go to the hospital back to back for like 2 days, and then you get everything else done. After the hospital, the weeks get pretty smooth. Um, it's just a lot of things pile up on one. You got a lot of like formal interviews or informal interviews where you go table from table, or there's times where you go upstairs and meet with the general manager, the head coach, the quarterback coach, everybody in that nature. So there's, I mean, there's times, but as an athlete and as an athlete with great mental capabilities, I like to be able to, just when I go back to my room, get off my phone, so I can debrief. Just enjoy that time and actually just think about what just happened.
I mean, you were a starter in the SEC, so I doubt you're a stranger to pressure cooker environments. But is that tough? I mean, just the draft process is, it's so high profile. You got people on social talking about prospects. I mean, you're hearing it from teams and coaches as well. But is it difficult sort of being able to block that out and just focus on you?
No, it's not difficult at all. I'm not too big on social media. Yeah, I post and things like that, or interact with some of my former teammates. But at the same time, like, I don't look at the things that are being said about me, because at the end of the day, what is it gonna do for me and my family? People gonna talk at the end of the day, whether you do something good or bad. You just got to be able, you know who you are, especially around this time with draft process. You get a great understanding of who you are as a person, because you don't have your head coach or your quarterback coach or your assistant quarterback coach or your strength coach. Everybody trying to text you to make you get up. Like, you want this money, you got to be able to get up and go get it.
To that end, I'm curious about this as well. So you were a Senior Bowl guy as well. You went down to Mobile, and that's also a process. 3 days of practice, and meetings. Again, it's a whole separate process. So this is like 6 weeks now where you're getting pretty steady feedback from NFL teams, NFL coaches. I'm curious. Good or bad, wherever you want to take it. But like, is there any, like, what feedback are you getting from teams in this process in terms of stuff they like about you, stuff they wonder about you? Just kind of what have you learned about what NFL teams think of you here over the last month or so?
Um, they say I have a great upside. It's not too many things that they can coach for me. But me as a person, I like being coached. I like hearing new things. I go by the saying, if you don't learn something new, the next day, what's the point of living? So and then other feedback I get is they didn't know I was that smart. It's based on the offense I played in, but a lot of people don't know that I went to Michigan first, and my first two playbooks were actually pro style, NFL style offenses. So I was able to do that at the age of 17 and 18. So
Let's talk about that for a second, because that's a great point. I mean, multiple, long college career, 3 years at Michigan, transferred to Tennessee. I mean, it seems like you've been through just about everything. There was a COVID season somewhere in there in the middle of it all. You get to Tennessee. And I think that's a fascinating point. Like these days, over the last few years, Hendon Hooker went through it as well last year, is, people wondering about the Tennessee playbook. Does it translate to the NFL? But you obviously played at Michigan under Jim Harbaugh as well, which is like as pro style as it gets. What is your comfortability with the different things that might get thrown at you in the NFL, and maybe just give us a snapshot of who you are as a quarterback?
I mean, only thing that'll be different is like, trying to get grown men to go. They 35, 40 years old with kids and they got wives and things like that. But I feel like once they get to know me and how hard I work, it'll be a little bit different for them. They'll respond a little bit better. But all that takes time. All the great things in life takes time, so you can't rush it. Not looking to rush it. Enjoy these moments. But other than that, man, just our offense at Tennessee were different. Number system and getting guys into space, but Tennessee, Michigan was more pro style, looking to check versus different type of fronts, different shades, or if it's pressure that way, redoing the point. But at Tennessee, that's where it helps you play into space and help you play on time. So like you have a lot of hots in a certain play, or you can flip protection. Like a lot of people say we don't do that at Tennessee. We don't have to because D-line is not a factor. D-line's only a factor in third down, but if we're already kicking tail, then there's no point for them to go hard in the first place. So, at that nature, but they do teach us a lot at Tennessee. Like we do QB school in the summertime. So I think the quarterbacks at Tennessee now, spring ball about to get a start in 2 weeks. So they already went over QB school. So they teach you like coverages, every coverage, what that person have, run gaps, learning the run game in our offense, so what guys going, things like that.
I'm taking an educated guess here because I've been doing this for a minute, but in the times that you've met with teams, did they put you on the whiteboard a decent amount, or has that not come yet?
Nah, they have.
I mean, how's that going for you?
It's football, man. I've been doing this since I was 4, so it ain't nothing new. If you don't know something, ask. But also just paying attention. I'm big on details as a quarterback. I feel like no matter what you do, you have to explain the details, or you have to go by details, because those small details add up to a bigger picture.
So you've still got your pro day coming up here in a few weeks in Knoxville. I'm curious, just because, I mean, so much goes into playing quarterback, right? And like it's so different when you don't have a live defense. Can you take me through just what your days look like right now as you're getting ready for pro day, as you're getting ready for the draft? Like what's a typical day for Joe Milton in terms of what you're working on, how often you're working out, that type of stuff?
Yeah. So it depends. Goes back and forth, but on a Monday, we'll throw first. It'll be me, Blake Sandstrom, and Spencer. We'll throw first, and then that'll go from like 8:30 to 10:15. Then we take like a little 25-minute break, and then we start speed training with Les. All 3 of us. Speed training go from at least 11:30 to like 12:10. And then on Mondays, we have workouts at 1. So we'll go to workouts from 1 to 2 at Stance with Naomi. And then after that, so we got PT right after. So we'll go PT from 2 to 3. And then I come home and I watch film. And then I turn on my show and I get ready for bed.
Maybe every now and then you hop on a podcast with some guy who's asking you a bunch of dumb questions.
Nah, I don't even do those, to be honest.
Well, we appreciate it all the more then. We appreciate you for taking the time. I got one last one for you, and I know how this goes. So you're going to hear your name called at the end of April. I don't know when, but you're going to hear your name called, and one fan base is going to rush out to learn everything they can about Joe Milton, and they're going to be watching this clip, they're going to be watching other clips. What can you tell us about Joe Milton, the quarterback, Joe Milton, the person, for that lucky team that adds you on draft weekend?
Oh man, you'll get a great person, great character, somebody that lights up the room. But on the field, you'll get a playmaker, you'll get a dog. I come for nothing, so I want everything. Also, you're gonna get a winner, win by any means necessary. But the one biggest most, I'll always keep God first. Make sure that y'all understand that too.
Absolutely. It's awesome, man. Well, hey, we appreciate the time. Best of luck. Looking forward to seeing how this unfolds for you, and I'll be rooting for you, man. Thanks, Joe.
No problem. Thank y'all.
That just about does it for today's show. But before we get out of here, we got one more bit of business to get to. Would we even work in sports media if we didn't try to jump on the March Madness bandwagon? Of course not. I'm not going to let that pass us by. So, in keeping with that time-honored tradition, we got a fun thing to get to this week. We are doing a best of NFL head coaches bracket to celebrate the basketball tournaments. Cannot wait for the action on the court. Cannot wait to see what y'all think of this. We're not doing the voting on Twitter this time around, but we do want your help. If you go to our YouTube channel at NFL on Fox, you've heard me promoting it. Head over to our YouTube channel, or if you're watching it there, that's where you can find it. Go vote on our bracket of NFL head coaches. We got all 32 of them. We're going to take you through as we go through the basketball tournament. We're going to go through our coaching tournament. I'll be honest, I am excited to see what y'all think of our seating. I'm sure some fan bases are going to take issue with us, but yeah, you see it there. We got Andy Reid, Kyle Shanahan up at the top. You look around and see your favorite guy. You tell me who you think we criminally underseeded, who has no business being as high as they are. Oh my God, why does he have such a good seed? What has he ever won? Oh my God, this guy won a Super Bowl. You got him all the way down here. There's so much for you to get mad at. And then you can cast your vote and tell us what you think. We'll go through, like I said, as the basketball tournament goes, we'll work through our coaches tournament and we'll see who you think is the best coach in the NFL. I have a feeling the big guy in Kansas City's got a leg up on the rest of the field. But honestly, there's so much more reason to be interested in this when you think about Bill Belichick has maybe not retired, but he's not in the NFL right now. Pete Carroll also stepping down this year. So a lot of the most accomplished coaches in the league are not part of the landscape. I can't wait to see what you, our listeners, think of the pecking order. We will get to it starting this week. Like I said, vote at the YouTube channel at NFL on Fox. We'll get this going. Cannot wait for the basketball tournament. Cannot wait for our tournament. It's the best time of year. It's the best sports days on the calendar, at least some of them, as March Madness gets going. And now, as our coaching bracket gets going, looking forward to that. That does it for the show. Make sure you get subscribed if you haven't, please. You want to know where the bracket goes. Also, what other crazy news is coming your way. You can find us on Spotify. You can find us on Apple Podcasts. We will be back later this week with more news from in and around the NFL. We're going to talk to a fellow podcaster, a fellow expert in this field. Greg Rosenthal will be joining us to take a look at what's happened so far in free agency, as well as what we can expect in the second and third wave, what players are left that can make a difference in the 2024 season. Looking forward to that. As always, I appreciate y'all so much, and I'll talk to you soon.